All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from in the world. We're so excited to have you here for today's session, creating a weekly maintenance schedule with John Reeve. Next slide, please, John. Thank you. A couple of quick pieces of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be available to you as soon as this is over. We'll send you an email from the Livestorm platform so that you can view it on demand anytime. Q&A will be throughout the session. Really want to emphasize this. John is more than happy to take questions as they come up, so make sure that you use the question and the chat functionality. You'll see it on the right-hand side of your screen. Make sure that you use that and drop in your questions as they come up, because John is happy to take them throughout the presentation. I will let him know if you have any. And then please tell us how we did at the end. I'll be sending you a link to a quick survey. I'll drop it in the chat as well. Really appreciate hearing your feedback so that we can keep bringing you sessions that are of interest. Now to meet our speaker. So John is our guest speaker today. He's an independent consultant with over 3.5 decades of experience at the Center of Asset Management and Reliability. Prior to becoming a consultant, John worked in this engineering division of a nuclear submarine and was a scheduling supervisor for civilian nuclear power plant. John is also a certified reliability leader, certified maintenance manager, and his career objective has been to merge the two worlds of CMMS technology with maintenance reliability professionals in support of asset reliability, workforce productivity, and job safety. Thank you so much for joining us today, John.
Well, thank you, Maura. You always do such a good job at that introduction.
You're an easy person to introduce. So without further ado, John, please take it away.
Okay, well, this subject, I've scratched my head quite a bit as to what is the title of this subject. There could be multiple titles. Let's use the truth about scheduling, because I think there's a story that has not been told. And for whatever reason, pretty much all of the CMMS vendors have, no one else has thought of this solution that I'm about to show you. The solution is much more than just software. It's a combination of the software, the surrounding process, and the supporting roles, which I'll be showing you in a moment. So I'm saying this: let's enable every size organization to create an automated weekly maintenance schedule inside the CMMS. In other words, no add-on is required. Imagine that. Now, there would be some configuration, but you do not need to purchase any add-on and provide annual support costs. Okay, so the truth about scheduling, this is the agenda. I'll discuss the problems surrounding this advanced process, and there's quite a few. I'll show you a fancy infographic that explains the overall process. I'll break down the user communities that are out there. You know, quite frankly, some don't even want to schedule. They exist. All right. We'll discuss some definitions. I'll state the purposes and benefit behind a weekly schedule as to why I even have one. And I've identified, in my opinion, the top 5 challenges, and I'm going to address each one of those, solving the problem. And then at the end, I'll have a complete start to finish process flow, illustrating the different type organizations size-wise and how they would approach this solution. So this presentation will not only prove that it's technically possible to embed this functionality inside the CMMS, but also make it possible for any size organization to do so. Your only requirement is to have a CMMS. Problem statement. I've got 4 of them. The majority of all organizations have never, using a CMMS, have never successfully created an automated weekly maintenance schedule. I need to underline the word automated because that's a key part of this. With using balanced resources and a fairly ranked backlog to create a set of work. Smaller organizations with no or minimal planning scheduling staff are particularly challenged to produce this type of output. There is a disconnect, in my opinion, between the subject matter experts, the people who write the books and write articles on this subject. Their content's valid. However, they have not necessarily demonstrated to me in their content that they know how to successfully roll out this solution, particularly an automated solution, unless they always intended a manual process. Okay, it may be that the number one reason why so many shy away from even thinking about this type of approach is due to bad data. They know they have bad data, and quite frankly, they just can't put in any type of advanced solution in place because they know it's going to be inaccurate. So this is my information infographic, as you call it, and it shows the gatekeeper at the upper left-hand corner feeding the planner, if you have one. And then there's a automated work order ranking matrix, and then the weekly schedule meeting that creates a set of work. And then the maintenance supervisors issue the daily plans just prior to each shift start. The week begins. There's always emergent work coming in, of course. And there's daily shift feedback from the technicians to the supervisors, and the status gets updated each shift. And sometimes there's an estimate to complete capture because there's carryover work. So, definitions. Planning and scheduling are different topics and they're different roles. Sometimes you see let's see, a little box that says P&S, and the presenter wants to talk about both subjects at the same time. Well, that's possible. It's just going to take quite a while. And 9 times out of 10, they end up spending the majority of their time talking about planning, which is important. But I'm saying we need to also think harder about the scheduling process. Some organizations, due to their size, will employ one person with a combined title of planning and scheduling. Now, we're talking about scheduling, but at the bottom here, there are different types of schedules. I'm familiar with outage scheduling, major project scheduling, long-range planning, and all of that, countdown schedules, whatever. And because of that, there's different types of schedulers. So you could be talking to an outage scheduler, and he or she would not really be familiar with weekly scheduling. Some people think generating PMs automatically from the CMMS, that in itself is, quote unquote, the subject of weekly scheduling. And it's much more than that. So let's go through the different types of schedules here. Top to bottom on this list, there's 10. In the middle section rectangle are the weekly schedules, but even within that, there's different ideas, thoughts, opinions on what a weekly schedule is. I'm focusing on the weekly schedule that's automated. This work set is created using an automatic leveling tool and would reside inside the CMMS. So I'm not talking about outage scheduling. I'm not talking about major project schedules with logic ties. I'm certainly not talking about a daily plan. Or in some cases, I know of sites that just produce a list of work and they call that a schedule. Okay, so I'm narrowing the focus. Now, let's identify the organizations. We're breaking down those organizations as to whether or not they even want the weekly schedule, right? So 35%, that's this oval, have no desire to create a weekly maintenance schedule. Maybe that's hard to believe, I don't know, but that's what I've seen experience-wise. 50% would like to have a weekly schedule program to be embedded inside this CMMS-based product, but they've never seen that type of solution perhaps yet, and so they're still waiting for that to happen. And I hope some of those people are on the call today because I'm going to identify how to do this. Now, 40% would like to have one, but they cannot because their staffing is, maybe they don't have any planners. Hard to believe. Some sites are so small they don't have it. Or they do have 1 or 2 planners, but quite frankly, they are being used for reactive maintenance or whatever. Or they just can't handle the amount of work coming in each day, so the backlog grows. Or the data inside the CMMS, the backlog, the open work list, it's not very well documented, prioritized, or estimated, and it falls into what we call bad data. And when you have bad data, you cannot implement any type of automated solution. Yep. Okay. That's the 40%. And so you see that oval sort of intersects with the 50%. Yep. All right. Now 30% do not trust any kind of automation. So even if if there was a scheduling solution that had the capability of automatically leveling, they wouldn't use it. They wouldn't activate that feature because, quite frankly, they don't trust automation. They can't see it. They can't touch it. And they're saying, well, how the heck did that set of work get selected? 15% already have a resource leveled weekly schedule. That's this right here, but it's manually created. I know of organizations where this scheduler will sit with the craft supervisor for 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours, and they will individually select work from the backlog. And that's for one craft. And then that guy leaves, and the scheduler brings in the next craft. And so this goes on for a couple, 3 days in the week, and that's what the scheduler does. The scheduler is also trained to operate the drag drop solution because the supervisor doesn't know how to use it. So that's a tedious process there. 1% have figured this out. They've acquired the right software. They've got the right processes in place, the right roles, but that's 1%. We're going to break this down further. So here's the 35% that we had on the previous screen right there, 35% at the top. Okay, now 1, 2, 3 here on the bullets. Some users prefer a block of work for the month. So again, with the PM guys, they generate PMs for the whole month. Well, that's not a weekly schedule. They let the maintenance staff determine when they will do something. And so, yep, this block of work is for PM work, like I just mentioned, and they use the repair work to sort of fill in, or sometimes it's the other way around. If the percentage of reactive maintenance is significant, the PM work can be deemed as fill in. Yeah, I know some of you are cringing, but this is what's happening. Lastly, leadership may simply provide a list of all open work in the backlog, and they may have the maintenance work contracted out to a service provider, and so it's up to the service provider looking at the huge list of work to figure out what they want to do. Okay, that's what's going on in the world for those guys. Some may, they don't buy into this weekly schedule concept, and so they simply create a daily plan, and that's their only focus. Yep. They'll have an O&M meeting, operations and maintenance supervisory meeting at the start of the shift day, perhaps, and that's when they create that type of output. Again, there's some that simply do not want any type of schedule, and they are definitely in a reactive mode. All right, so next, 30% do not trust automation, I already mentioned. 40% would like to have one, but they cannot. So they don't have adequate planner scheduler staff. They don't have time in the week. The backlog isn't accurate enough. The data inaccuracies consist of weak prioritization, very little ready backlog, poor craft estimates, inability to track carryover work. There's various solutions out on the market right now, including the drag drop solutions. And as I've read through their literature, not one of them address carryover work. So what percentage of work each week is carryover? Or to ask it conversely, I'm not asking for a question and response here, I'm just talking out loud. What percentage of work was started in that week but doesn't finish? And my guess is it could be 10, 15, 20%. Okay, and so when that work goes into the next week, carryover work, you should not be using the original estimate to do your next calculation, and therefore you need an ETC. Well, there's no field on the CMMS work order that stores the ETC. Isn't that a worry? 50% would like a weekly scheduled program to be embedded, not an add-on, but embedded inside the base product. Yep, it helps simplify the whole process. 15% have a manual resource leveled weekly schedule? Okay. And 1% have that automated solution. So I'm going to show you 3 key roles here. Someone initiates the work request. It could be operations. It could be a student at a university. It could be a maintenance person even. But let's say, okay, originator. They identify the anomaly and they call it in. They have a service request screen that they log on to. They contact the building owner. However it gets created, and it's called service request or work request, various names. Hopefully, they enter the problem description and a problem code. And furthermore, they identify this is emergency or urgent or routine work. And they, I need them to identify the building they're in, the location, uh, and the asset ideally. And I need that originator's name. And it would be really nice if they would take a guess at what if this is a plumbing issue or electrical issue or whatever. And I call that the lead craft. That's the job of the originator. Gatekeeper role. Now, I would believe, I'm going to guess rather, that the majority of all people on this call do not currently have a gatekeeper role. I believe this role, if introduced, would add substantial value to your process and data accuracy. This person reviews all, this could be a call center role. Some industries like universities have call centers. This person would review all incoming work. As to accuracy and completeness, change the status once he's done reviewing it to gatekeeper reviewed or something like that. Before we do that, though, let's assign a backlog priority above and beyond what was entered over here by the originator, because only the maintenance people really understand the current backlog to assign a relative ranking of importance. This person may make the assessment that this work needs to be attended to right away. That's called dispatching. The gatekeeper may contact the originator if it's unclear as to what the heck they're describing problem-wise. If the lead craft was not entered, he's going to enter it along with a rough estimate. I'm going to repeat that. The gatekeeper would not only review incoming work, but enter a rough estimate. Again, very few organizations are doing this, but if you have a pen and paper, you're taking notes, this is one of the key elements for success in this new design, is to have that rough estimate. Okay, and further, this design that I'm discussing could have an automatically assigned rough estimate based upon historical average, looking at all actuals for that lead craft going back 1, 2, 3 years. You could do that and then have this guy review it and tweak it, perhaps. This is not an exact science, but to let the work order go through at this process and sit in the backlog for maybe a month or 2 months before the planner gets to it, well, that makes the backlog very uncertain as to what the heck is there. You can count work orders, but you have no idea as to the size of the work in the backlog by craft. That's a key point, gatekeeper role. Now, here's the planner scheduler, if you have one. He will look at the job plan library and see if there's similar scope out there. Now, if he's reading the problem description and is still not sure as to what the heck it is, he may request a walk down or do the walk down himself, so he's going to leave his desk, right? Apply necessary precautions and permitting requirements, link relevant documents, enter the formal craft estimate, so he's going to override the rough estimate, fine. Identify any spare parts that are needed and specialized tools, and safety precautions. I don't have that here, but it needs to be. Maybe some materials need to be ordered that are not in stock. Okay, he'll get that going. And then when he's all done, he's going to change this to fully planned. So those work orders at that point are coded as fully planned and will override the gatekeeper reviewed. Yeah. This person will also possibly run the weekly schedule meeting. Yep. And then he'll be in charge of schedule compliance. So
John,
go ahead.
Yeah. A question from Felix. He says, how do you measure weekly backlog management per hour?
What was the verb? How do we manage?
How do you measure
Or
weekly
measure?
backlog management per hour?
Per hour. Okay, the question I think is more along the lines of compliance, and or we're asking about actuals versus estimate, but I'm going to assume this is compliance. So on the subject of compliance, my opinion is to, if they do the job sometime in the week, then they're 100% compliant. I do not care about the exact hour of the day or even the day of the week. If so, the set of work that I haven't explained yet, but the set of work is simply a set of work. It is not linked to a day of the week or even a worker name. Now, if I didn't answer that question properly, ask him to resubmit the question. But I'm going to move. Any other questions?
That's it for now.
Okay. What work? Now, this subject is called subjective selection. Now, very few are talking about this, but this is what is happening. For some, the subjective selection approach is their preferred process, and I believe this is not a good process. So here's an example Q&A. The scheduler, like I said earlier, is sitting with the maintenance supervisor. So the scheduler says, well, what work do you want to do next week? So, hey, I've got a list. Here it is. All right, fine. Do you want to reference the backlog priorities? Sounds like a good idea. Supervisor quickly says, hey, you know, and I know they are not accurate enough and they don't indicate relative importance. I'll tell you what is important. I'm the supervisor. Okay, what work carried over from last week? There were 4 jobs that didn't complete, so supervisor is aware of that. What is the remaining craft estimate? Well, I don't know, never asked. Why does that even matter? Okay, the supervisor doesn't understand the importance of that, and if it is being captured, it's only in his head, and it's not being stored inside the CMMS, which if we're about to implement an automated process, that information would be very important. Show me your work list. Let's pull these up on the screen. It looks like some of these do not even have a formal plan on them right now. Yep, I will give you estimates as we speak, so don't you worry your little head about it. And so I need to know what work goes to what day, because he's using a drag drop tool. Yes, here's what I plan to do each day of the week. So the supervisor has put some thought into it, but he manually reviewed the backlog, all 500 work orders. Well, it'd be 100 for his craft perhaps. And he's figured out in his head what he wants to do. And not only that for the week, but each day of the week. This is simply amazing to me. And the supervisor, and here is the worker who will do each job. So they are essentially making 5 daily plans 1 week in advance. This process is called subjective selection. It is tedious, time consuming. It creates the 5 daily plans as opposed to simply a set of work for the week. It's highly prone to error in that you are projecting work for the entire week down to the day of week and the worker name. Odds are great that the daily plans will change by the time you get to Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Usually the supervisor only selects work that is fully planned, but that isn't always the case. And sometimes the supervisor in the meeting, talking to the scheduler, will select some work that has not even been estimated yet, but he wants it to be on his schedule. And so that's called estimating on the fly. And that is what's going on. That is subjective selection. It's not a good practice. I question the accuracy of that type of output. So, what are the objectives of a weekly maintenance schedule? Why do I need a weekly schedule? Leadership wants to allow supervision to have input to the schedule, but also control the amount of work. So that's the viewpoint from leadership. The leadership wants to optimize backlog reduction and, of course, provide craft coordination and ensure job safety. And more importantly, you're providing advanced notification a week in advance to the supporting departments, primarily operations. In the case of a university buildings, the professors want to know that their building is going to lose electricity on whatever day, so on and so forth. Yep. So automation, in my opinion, should be the way of the future, it improves schedule accuracy, it enhances craft coordination, and reduces, most importantly, the time to create the schedule. I mean, the solution I haven't shown you yet, but it would run in a matter of seconds. It's not hours. All right. Weekly scheduling is an advanced. Yes.
Question for you, John.
Yes.
This is from Marco. He says the capacity loading labor for the weekly maintenance schedule, in parentheses, utilization of the labor resources, is a definition from a planning team or a reliability team, in your opinion?
Oh, wow. That's a deep question. Well, there's two moments to assess and review the set of work. In this case, the weekly schedule. The first moment is entering the correct data inside the CMMS in the form of a rough estimate and or a formally planned work order. The second moment is when you go to the weekly schedule, the review time there, that's when the computer generated output can be altered. There could be errors in the calculations, usually due to bad data, or they just may, the people in that meeting may have insight from maybe the plant manager or engineering manager that says, by gosh, by golly, I definitely want this job done next week. And so they force it onto the schedule. I'm sure I'm not answering this question correctly, but I'm very mindful of the role of the reliability leaders, reliability engineers, reliability team in asset management. But when it comes to estimating the size of the job and determining what work goes onto the schedule, if they want to be a player, they need to be in that meeting. And again, if I didn't answer that question correctly, have that person come back, and they can send me an email, and I'll be showing that address here again later on.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, Marco, if you have a follow-up question, please let us know. And John, there's quite a few people asking for the presentation slides, so I'll drop your email in the chat as well, and they can connect with you to get the deck afterwards.
Yes, I'm more than happy to do so, and thank you, Maura.
Sounds good.
So
one more question.
Yeah,
a few more. That's all right. So Sarah says this sounds like a story that I've been hearing for a while. Are you seeing any change in thinking over time in the industry?
I know a couple of Sarahs. Okay, so well,
Sarah Stewart.
yeah, okay, well, I know Sarah, yes, and I've been, as she knows, I've been thinking, talking about this type of solution for a very long time. I've written articles on it, the elusive weekly maintenance schedule, and of course, there's a U.S. patent surrounding the order of fire. So, what has changed? It's been hard. I'm being very frank here. It's been hard for me to get on board as a speaker in the regional meetings and annual meetings for the CMMS community for whatever reason. And so I'm very pleased that Upkeep has offered me this forum with their large user community to speak to on this subject. So what has changed though? What has changed? Well, just recently, there's a developer company called MGI, and they have, using a specification I gave them, completed the design of this solution. So that just happened very recently, and they're ready to go. When I'll describe more about that at the back end of this presentation. What has changed? Well, I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but it's just my frustration in that I know the community deserves better. They deserve a solution that works lightning fast and can add value to the world of asset management. That's what I'm all about. I'm going to go on. Is that okay, Maura?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So here's we're going to discuss the five problems that top five problems that I think need to be addressed. And number one, the definition for a weekly schedule. Again, it's much more than just a set of PMs that are due in the week. It's corrective maintenance, and it needs to be balanced against the resource availability. We need top 5 challenges. We need to get a rough estimate, in my opinion, on all incoming work. And if there's bad data, well, that gatekeeper role is ideal for reviewing that input. We need the ability to capture ETC for carryover work, and that it's on the main record, but it needs to be at the craft level. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense on the main record. Okay, we need to have a fair way of ranking the backlog. So if you asked, if you had 20 or even 100 people in the room, and you asked them, these are all CMMS users and they're familiar with their backlog. If you ask them how accurate is your prioritization, maybe only 20% would feel confident in their prioritization scheme. So that's a problem. If we can't rank the backlog, that's going to screw up the processing order for resource leveling. I'll explain more of that later as to how that is important. We need to balance the work using an automated resource leveling program to minimize the need for subjective selection. Okay, so at the bottom, there seems to be a widespread misunderstanding of the CMMS potential here. All of the data we need that I'm about to discuss or am discussing is inside the CMMS. It's there. It's there right now. We just need to write this automation script or whatever you want to call it that would perform the resource leveling. It could be that straightforward. Stakeholders are not implementing adequate controls to ensure data quality. There's no data quality plan. There's no gatekeeper role. There's no process and data audits. There's no business analyst that's looking at this. There's no proactive error checks. I could go on and on. And lastly, the asset management professionals, reliability people and whomever else, are treating the CMMS, should be treating the CMMS as a source for making database decisions. And but if they aren't doing that, the data quality will suffer and automation capabilities will be lacking. So here's my answers to those 5 problems. Clear definitions. There is a well-known author worldwide. His name is Doc Palmer. He's written several books now on scheduling, planning and scheduling actually, but he does focus on scheduling. And his words, not mine, are to create a set of work, not 5 daily plans. Okay. Now note that a drag drop tool can still be used once the set of work is created. So I'm okay with that concept if done in that order. Deploy a gatekeeper role. Well, I think more people need to start thinking about this. If your problem is bad data, well, why don't you fix it? So if your arm hurts when it goes like this, don't go like that anymore. All right, so start reviewing all incoming repair work to look for bad data, stale work, inaccurate status, PMs without craft estimates. That shouldn't even exist. But I bet I could run an error check right now in your system and find PM job plans with missing craft estimates. We need to enter the lead craft and rough estimate. Now, the gatekeeper role, if you deploy that person, can dramatically improve data quality and more importantly, position us to operate an automated resource leveling tool. Capture the ETC, improve backlog prioritization. I'm going to show you several ways to do that. Implement the automated leveling program. So the solution I talk about is utilizes the order of fire concept, which is the basis for my US patent, and that controls the processing order. So right now, the drag drop tools are saying, hey, we provide that capability. Okay, let me see. So we can offer infinite number of individual selection statements from the backlog. Isn't that good enough? Well, no. Each individual selection statement needs to also allow individual sort statements, and their products do not currently do that. So this is the Doc Palmer book. So I'm now addressing the 5 issues. Number 1, Doc Palmer, there's his picture of his book. And this is page 89 in that particular book right there. And so there it is. These are his words, weeks worth of work. Okay, next. In other words, carryover work should not be interrupted. Yeah. Next. The scheduler does not assign work order to individual crew members. Yeah. Well, this is what's going on with the drag drop tools when they sell that to a customer and they introduce training. This is what they're doing. They're assigning it to not only to individual workers, but also the day of the week. This is the author here. He's the expert, and I'm trusting this guy. Okay. Scheduler does not specify the day of the week. I just said that. 1 week period strikes a balance. So it's not, you're not building a schedule for 4 weeks. You're building it for 1 week. And now you can do a countdown and start preparing 4 weeks in advance, but at the end of the day, it's a 1 week schedule. Gatekeeper captures the rough estimate inside the CMMS. Well, how do you do that? Well, the yellow fields are new. So let's add a field here titled type of estimate. And this would be overridden when the planner does the formal planning. But initially, the gatekeeper will put in a value, and this will change to rough. So he's going to say the total estimate here is for mechanics is 2 guys, 6 hours. So maybe the majority of all incoming work for many industries is done by one craft. Now, I know you can have multiple crafts, and that would be the exception to the rule. But we can still handle that when we go to the plans tab to put in the multiple crafts. I'm just saying, let's make it easy for the gatekeeper to do it on the main screen and minimize clicks. So when he does that, the data goes in through the 2A, 3 fields there, and then it automatically populates the plans tab with the 1 line for the mechanic. So there's your 6 total, 2, which divides it into 3. Okay, and it's labeled as rough. Now when the formal planner comes in here, he'll override this, and maybe he'll even override this, the total estimate, yeah? So that's how this can work. The formal planner may also add a new line for a different craft. Say electrical, you need to tag out the electrical power before you start the work. Okay, fine. Now, the maintenance supervisor, at the end of each shift, he talks to his techs and gets the status. The tech says, I'm done. Or he says, I've got a little more work to do tomorrow. Okay, fine. Capture the ETC each day. Now, when the weekly schedule is calculated, sometimes like on a Thursday for next week, Thursdays are more important. So when the supervisor talks to the tech, how much more you got to go, give me the estimate as if it was Monday morning. And that is the ETC for Monday week. And then that value would be automatically used by the resource leveling program I'm about to show you. Important concept. Backlog prioritization is generally weak. This probably applies to 90% of all people on this call. How do we fix this? All right, well, the gatekeeper can play a role here, but again, let's figure out what we got. So what is work order priority? This little area describes what it is, but more importantly, the call center, the gatekeeper, or the lead planner or on-shift maintenance supervisor can assign this value. If there's anything that needs to be dispatched, okay, you get that going. But we're talking about all the other work now, the plannable work. We want to assign a priority. Now, what's the best way to do this? Well, you have a field on your work order screen right now, probably called work order priority. And I've been to a site, I'm taking my pen out here. The site had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Priority 1 was emergency. Priority 2 was urgent. Priority 3 was plannable work. Priority 4 was this requires a shutdown. Actually, there was no 5. Okay, so everything in the backlog is priority 3. Well, what value is that? So now we're looking at 100% priority 3s. That's what we want to focus on for online maintenance scheduling, not the shutdown work. And I can't separate them based upon the numerical priority. So then what do I have? I have to revert to the origination date. And origination date is not the ideal way. It's a terrible way to be determining what work you should be doing day to day, week to week. There's a combined priority approach. Now I've got the next slide, we'll discuss that. And then there's the work order matrix approach. And then this order of fire thing. I'm going to show you, this is a brand new application that I call the order of fire. And I'll show you how this can be combined with the priority, or the combined priority, or the work order matrix, or just by itself. And so there's 4 ways to improve work order prioritization in the backlog. This is a common method here. So you assign priority to a given job, and some people go 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, or in this case, we're going priority 1 through 7. And so if we had a priority 3 and then an equipment type of 4, now in this case here, they're saying 5 is more important, right? The higher number. So it's a little bit backwards from that one, but a lot of people do it this way. And so how do we make a mathematical formula? Well, when you've got this situation here on the work order prioritization, we'll need to subtract from something. I just picked 10. I could have used 8, you know. So 10 minus 3 is 7, times 4 is equal to 28. So that gives me a numerical ranking using a combined formula. Backlog rank. I really like this approach here. So this is a 2-dimensional matrix. We've got the equipment priority on the left. That gives you your horizontal slicing. And then we've got groups here. So here's my rough estimates. Then we've got formal plan jobs. Then we've got PM work. Some people say, hey, PM's most important for our site. Well, then push that all the way over here. Okay. The operations people, if you go into the operations manager, his office, he has a whiteboard sometimes. In the upper left-hand corner, he's got 6 assets that he says are at risk right now. Maybe this is the engineering manager too. And so he wants to track any new work that comes in assigned against that due to the risk that's involved. Yep. Project work. So you've got a major contractor showing up Wednesday next week. Well, that would go into the scheduled start. And well, if you better make sure you've got that work on the weekly schedule if that guy's coming on site. You can also have condition-based maintenance from CBT, the PDM, some people call it. And so if that's out there, you need to give that some priority. You can have more vertical slices than the ones I've shown here. The HSE guy may want to have anything that's causing extreme risk to workers addressed sooner than later. And so that gets high priority. And then the urgent should already be done, but just in case it's not, and the timing fits in with the weekly schedule, it would be given the highest value. So if we've got, let's see what we got here. So if we've got a work order with priority 3, that's right here, and it's against, oh, this is a formally planned work order. So this column here, priority 3, against a criticality of 5, then that gives us a numerical ranking of 38. There you go. What happens now? Well, let's put in an automation script that populates all work in the backlog, all work in the backlog each night while you are sleeping, and re-rank the entire backlog using these numbers. This would be a brand new field on the work order titled ranking, and there you go. And we could use that to incorporate into the order of fire. Create a resource leveling program. Well, yeah, that's the automation script, I call it. Maybe you have a different term for it, but whoever configures the CMMS to provide this feature function would take this design into account. So I still need the gatekeeper, and there's the resource leveling program. And this can be set up to run with 1 click. You know, the scheduler would run the meeting, but who would actually start this thing day 1 to create the set of work? Could even be the janitor. That's how simple this would be. 1 click. So here's the resource leveling program. I call it the RLP, but the designers of this product, MGI, they may give it a different name, fine. So what are the controlling factors? There's the ranking, the prioritization, the work order craft estimates, and the craft availability. With the rough estimates coming in and the formal planning, at some point, maybe 3 months from now, 100% of your backlog would have some type of estimate on it. Can you imagine that? And you could start producing pie charts showing by craft the number of man hours that are out there. Imagine the information obtained from that type of analytic. Now, here's our order of fire. Based upon the prioritization method that we're using, it will determine out of all of these work orders which ones go through this pipeline first. That's very important. It just shouldn't be the report date, origination date. All right. So the craft availability plays a role, obviously, and that creates a smaller set of work. I'm not saying do it on Tuesday. I'm not saying perform the work by Jim Bob. It's just a set of work for 1 week. No. So here's a question to the audience. I don't expect anyone to answer, Maura, but I'm going to give them 5 seconds, and I'm going to give the answer to them. So two mechanics have how many hours available? 2 mechanics for 1 week would have how many hours available? Well, it should be 80, assuming they're working a 40-hour week. And by the way, if they're working a 35-hour week or a 45-hour week, that information would be stored on the worker record inside the CMS, and we would know exactly. What if one mechanic is taking 1 day off next week? Okay, fine. Now we're down to 72. So we're talking about mechanics here. What if the efficiency factor is 0.7? Well, and someone's thinking right now, well, what the heck is efficiency factor? Why do you need that? Why shouldn't we be scheduling always to 100%? Okay, fine, fair enough question. Sometimes the HSE guy conducts safety meetings for 2 hours somewhere in the week. Then management conducts a business process improvement initiative. They take another 2 hours of your time. All of these meetings, they add up, and so they reduce your total availability. And that's how I use this efficiency factor. I'm not using it in any other way as to an individual worker's efficiency, but more so in the way I described. So 0.7 times 72, and now we're down to 50. So again, the assumption here is for your very small organization, you only have 2 mechanics. And instead of 80, we're now down to 50 availability. And that's what we're going to use here. Yeah. Now, if a work order, a specific work order, 22400 has 7 hours on it, what remains? Well, that's easy enough, 43. So what's the most important factor? The priority method, which determines the order of fire. The RLP will automatically determine how much maintenance staff you have. How will we do that? Well, we'll go inside your database. We'll read the number of workers, and I know for each worker what their default craft is. So now I'm able to calculate the total possible craft man hours available for 1 week. And if we capture the planned absences in advance, we now can create a total starting point for all of them. So let's pretend we have a site that's got 2 welders, 4 instrument guys, 2 engineering support people, so 2 basic laborers, multi-craft operators, painter, electrical, fire, and mechanical. 5 mechanics. So 5 times 40 is 200, yeah? That's our starting point. We'll pretend. So I'm also assuming there's no planned absences here. We'll just go with this, and no efficiency factor other than 1. So now there's that little box. Now I'm going to zoom in now using my fingers on my laptop. And okay, so this very first job, it requires instrument guys for a total man hours of 24. So how many, if I subtract the 24, how many hours do I have remaining for instrument? Again, I don't expect an answer, Maura, but so 24 subtracted from 160 is what? So it's 136, right? So let's move this thing over here, and there it is. So how do I know this next job down here is the next. By the way, that first job is a multi-craft work order. Fine. But here's the next job down here. How do I know this is the next job? How do I know this other job is the first job? It's that ranking. Yeah. The work order matrix ranking. And so the higher the number, that is what determines the subtraction in the order of fire. See that? Yeah. And so it's all simple math. I mean, if I had any knowledge about programming, I mean, I'm confident I could write this thing. But that's why we have MGI involved. They have provided this expertise, and they believe they have the solution that's ready to go. So hit the escape key, and we're going to move forward here. In some cases, with this is interesting down here at the bottom. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can see it, but there is some red. Work order was unscheduled. So that particular job is a multi-craft work order, and the first craft had sufficient resources, but the second craft had gone negative. Therefore, that job is unscheduled. It will not be selected in the set of work. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Both crafts need to be available. The order of fire. All right. So this is the order of fire screen. It'd be a brand new application. It determines the order of fire. The first line is work order priority equal 1. Emergency work. Okay. Work order priority equals 2. Urgent work. Status in progress, which means it's carryover work. If you start a job this last week, it's best practice to not interrupt it, and so on and so forth. 1 equal 1. But we have a scheduled start date that's inside the weekly schedule range. Well, we better schedule it. PM work. Target start prior to the weekly schedule range. Well, how the heck did that happen? It wasn't done. So we're giving it priority based upon where we placed it in the order of fire here. And it will be considered before the regular PM work. Now, you can write this any way you want. This is just an example. And you can move things higher or lower in that order of fire statement. All right, so the key point here is each individual select statement has the option of individual sort. Yep. Okay. And we're only looking at open work and no task and whether or not it's inside the weekly schedule range. So the process flow. In a perfect world, we have all of these things, the staff, the backlogs fully planned, so on and so forth. But this isn't a perfect world, and so we need a different type of solution. Now, a large organization in yellow follows this path. Formally plan the work, conduct a weekly schedule meeting, maybe they make some changes, and it's done. It's issued. In a mid-size organization, formally plan the work, they may have this drag-drop tool that they purchased. IT purchased it for them, and they conduct a weekly schedule meeting. They make manual changes. Any size organization with the resource leveling program, they have the rough estimate process with the gatekeeper role. They can still formally plan work. Both of those come together. The automatic resource leveling program is run and creates a set of work, and the weekly schedule meeting occurs, and they can make changes in that weekly schedule meeting and rerun the RLP if needed. It only runs in 60 seconds, and see what has been added, what has dropped off. Now, so yeah, let me go through this. What I want to get to now is a very small organization. If you can imagine this, if anyone's on the call with that size, you might only have 2 mechanics. You do have a CMMS, and let's pretend you have this RLP. So no planner, down here, lower left-hand corner, letter X, no planner scheduler position exists, and the backlog does have the rough estimates in it. So the RLP would run through letter D, and you could conduct a weekly schedule meeting. So the set of work goes straight to a weekly schedule concept, and they issue the schedule, and they're ready to go. So this is the complete process right here. On the left, there's the gatekeeper. There's the automatic ranking of the backlog. The inputs we need are the craft availabilities, the backlog of estimates is properly ranked, and we've captured the ETC, the resource leveling program. The staffing options, now that's important. We can utilize this solution different ways depending upon the staffing that we do have. If you don't have any planners, but you could find someone to act as a gatekeeper role, you can still do this process. So in a weekly schedule meeting, it's not unusual to encounter data errors. You find a job that was already done, poor prioritization, you can correct it right then and there on the spot. You can correct missing craft estimates or incorrect craft estimates. You can apply start dates for project work that you know is going to happen that you somehow forgot to get entered. You can bundle work. So you have a high priority job that's been selected by the RLP. Fine. But this is at a remote location, so they're driving all the way out to this remote location. It'll take them a half hour to get there. Maybe the scheduler should consider any lower priority work and bundle it in with the higher priority. And so they do it in one trip. Of course, upper management can still force work at the last moment here at the 11th hour. Then you simply rerun the RLP and you're good to go. This is an example of the weekly schedule report, and you could make it look like anything. This is the easy part at this point. Yeah. So you form it. Normally you page break it by the lead craft. And so now a mechanic may not be the lead craft on all jobs. So if he's just a support craft, all his work would still all appear on this one page output. This is, in my opinion, the best way to show a daily plan. So when the supervisor using a drag drop tool or whatever makes the daily plan, this is a great way to show it in a two-dimensional matrix. Hey, I did write an article on this back in 2006 titled The Elusive Weekly Maintenance Schedule. And I will have a book coming out shortly, The Truth About Scheduling. And again, I mentioned that patent there at the bottom left. So I put a lot of thought into this, and it's taken me years to figure out how to explain this process simply enough so that people listening can understand. Okay, so here we are. MGI, Maintenance Group Incorporated, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Jeff Seward, Jeff Tippett, and that's their phone number. If anyone thinks they're going to want to get more information about the solution, they should do a print screen right now and then save that to Paint or Word or whatever you want to do. It's possible that some organizations, with the knowledge I provided, could build this solution themselves. You know, there are some savvy developers out there in the industry at organizations and sites that now that they know the vision, they could do this. I know those guys, and yeah. Some organizations will ask for a pre-built solution, and that's what MGI is offering here. The following is optional. If any of those individuals that do pursue this solution by MGI, I would be glad to offer a training workshop for your management team, leadership team, and a one-day implementation workshop. And by the way, the first 3 customers who pursue this contract sign would receive free training and implementation workshops that I just mentioned. Okay, so I realize some people are probably thinking, well, you wrote this for Maximo, yeah, but I believe there are listeners on this call who have other products, SAP, Infor, and many others, Upkeep, that that may be thinking about this possibility. And so I suggest that you contact that vendor as well as MGI and ask them if MGI could work with your vendor to get this design in place. Now, there's the email for Jeff Seward, Jeff_Seward at maintenancegroup.com. So, yeah. And again, my email is at the bottom for those who want the PowerPoint, but Maura will be offering the recorded webinar. So there you go, Maura. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm going to just send a quick link again to the survey. So please, if you have just a minute, it's only a couple questions, let us know how we did today, what topics you're interested in learning more about. Thank you so much, John, for your time today and for sharing this presentation with everybody on the call.
If you are interested in additional resources, visit onofkeep.com for more blogs, Q&As, customer stories, and more. And thank you all so much for joining today, and we hope to see you at another webinar soon.
Take care.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.